So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Teaching Australia webinar. We're going to cover a lot of general information about making the move from the UK and Ireland over to Australia, and hopefully answer a few questions along the way. I will preface by saying that we do have a chat option, so if you do want to put any questions in while we're kind of going through everything, feel free to do so. And if they haven't been answered by the end of the webinar, we will try and get around to a few at the end. If you do have any very specific questions, though, about your circumstances in particular, we do highly recommend booking a call with us so we can go through your scenario in particular. We are going to email you in a day or two with the recording of this webinar anyways, along with our booking links. So you are welcome to speak with us there. So just getting started with some introductions here. My name is Corey. I am on the global team. I have been working with ANZUK UK for over 2 years now internally as a global opportunities consultant, helping educators make the move over to Australia and New Zealand. But before this, I was actually a teaching assistant myself in Bristol and in Cardiff. And before that, I was actually in Canada. I'm Canadian myself, have made the move over here. I studied in the US, so I have a bit of experience with making these kinds of moves and all that goes into it. And yeah, I'm excited to speak with you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine and I'm a Global Opportunities Consultant as well, coming up to my first year here at ANZUK Education. I am a teacher by trade, like many of you. I have done some day-to-day sort of supply work here in the UK. I've spent a few years teaching in Japan and also teaching in Australia, in Queensland, in my home state. So I have a lot to sort of add to this conversation. I can really understand a lot of where you're coming from with your different questions. So I'm hoping that together we can answer a lot of those questions for you and help you prepare for your move to Australia.
Amazing. So just a little bit about what we'll be covering here today. Like I mentioned, it is just going to be general information about the move to Australia. So things about why move overseas, some of the requirements that go into teaching abroad, because there are quite a few steps and things to be aware of before you do make a move to any other country. We'll go through the locations in which we have opportunities available, the types of roles that we do have, registrations, and the works. And again, if you do have questions along the way, just put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. So just a quick, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jasmine.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say we're going to do a really quick introduction here to ANZUK Education. So we've been operating for 20 years and we were founded in 2004 and actually was founded by teachers. So something that I've really noticed in my experience at ANZUK is that we really put teachers and the impact that teachers make really at the forefront.
Absolutely. And I will mention as well, we have offices in Australia and the UK who support local educators in those locations, and New Zealand, I should mention as well. While we do have teams in the US and in Canada, we don't actually support educators moving to those locations, but we do help educators moving from those locations over to the UK and to Australia and New Zealand.
Alrighty, so our promise. So at ANZUK Education, we have a few promises, and this is really at the forefront of how we operate as a teaching agency. So we are really focused on our values here, our Be Great values, and exceptional experiences as well. So again, with having the teacher at the forefront and understanding the impact that quality educators make in the classroom every single day. So we firmly believe that in partnering with quality educators, we can make sure that we have the right educator at the right place at the right time. So all three of these promises really sort of wrap around all the different sort of supports and services that we offer as a teaching agency, but also as the global team. We see this on both ends, which is really special. So we see some of our educators coming from Australia to the UK, and then we also then support them going on the way back. So we have this real sort of wraparound sort of support. And in the same way, supporting you guys heading out to Australia, knowing that you are partnering with us and that we're going to focus not just on getting you into classrooms, but also on the value of the experience that you're having as a traveling educator. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and part of that experience as well is that we are actually a free service for our educators to use. We don't charge for any of our consultations or the process of making the move over there. We are, as Jasmine mentioned, we are educator based ourselves, so we understand that this is a big process for you, and we're here to support you at no fee to yourself. So a little bit about why I teach abroad, and I know that Jasmine can speak to this as well. She's taught in quite a few different locations, but a lot of the kind of amazing experiences that come from teaching abroad are based around your personal growth and your career development and life experience. It's a really, really great experience to just be able to step outside of your comfort zone, go into somewhere you've never been before. We have a lot of educators moving to Australia who have never visited before in their life, and they've just heard great stories, and it's so great to hear them just jumping into something that they are excited about and taking that risk. And a lot of the time, it ends up being an adventure of a lifetime, which is fantastic. It's also a really great way to develop yourself as an educator. You get to experience more cultures, more types of people, more history, and it really does kind of seep into your teaching along the way. Um, Not to mention that it is actually really great on your CV to come back home eventually or move on to the next location, wherever it might be, and be able to say that you have taught in multiple locations, multiple countries, you've had really well-rounded experience is fantastic to be able to say that in the future. Um, and of course, the life experience. You get to meet a whole other bunch of different people. You're going to meet a lot of expats wherever you go. You seem to find those pockets when you are an expat yourself, as well as just kind of bringing a bit of a community back with you if you do return home. You get to kind of bring a new piece of yourself wherever you go. So it's a really fantastic way to just grow and become a new version of you. Awesome. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of making this transition. The first thing we do need to talk about is working rights. Now, I will mention here that ANZUK Education, we are not able to actually speak on specific visas as they apply to you. We can give you the general information that's available to the general public, but we're not migration experts. We can't actually advise you on which route is best for you or how to go through these processes. What I will say, most of our educators do go on the working holiday visa. It's available to anybody with a UK or Irish passport, as well as a few others, of course. And if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, you are eligible for that one as well. Big misconception with this one. A lot of people do think they need to wait until the very end, right before they fly off to apply for this. But I will say that on the government website, they do ask you to apply for your working holiday visa before you even book your flights. Most people have it approved within minutes. It can be very quick turnaround time. However, there is the possibility of random medical exams or just certain delays that can take weeks to potentially even a couple months to come back. And we want to make sure that you are, able to kind of keep up with your flights and you have everything ready to go. It's essential to a lot of the process moving forward as well. So you can apply in advance. It will not actually activate until you land in Australia anyways, so there's no harm in doing so. If you are thinking of going on a more permanent basis, if you want to be in Australia long term or work towards citizenship, or you're going with family, we do recommend going on something like a skilled worker visa. There's quite a few different options that are available to educators, and you can speak with migration agents such as Visa Go Australia, who we do partner with. They have a lot of excellent information. They can guide you on this process, figure out which one's best for you, and actually give you direct advice, which is really helpful. And of course, if you do have an Australian or a New Zealand passport just sitting in your back pocket, absolutely put that to use as well because you have full working rights, no limitations. So it's really great to be able to put that to use as well. In terms of the qualifications themselves, it is important to note that Australia does have quite strict standards when it comes to teaching qualifications and what's approved to be able to teach. And this goes for any educator. So there isn't really a cover supervisor type role in Australia. You do have to be an approved and registered teacher to hold a casual or a contract position. And to obtain those registrations, you do have to have a minimum of 4 years of tertiary study, so like a bachelor's degree and higher. And at least one of those years does need to be dedicated towards education itself. Now, they're very particular around these supervised placement days as well, so that you do have to have specifically university supervised in-school placements in which you were not paid as a teacher during that time. So certain qualifications such as a QTS only or a 2-year teach first in which you were paid, there might be some question marks around that. We can talk through that specifically in a one-to-one call, but it is worth noting that you would need to kind of prepare for things in advance, and we recommend speaking with us as early as possible to make sure we can go through and get your plan settled before you kind of have everything booked and it kind of comes in as a curveball. And as I mentioned, you do have to have that teaching registration. We're going to go through those a little bit later on, but any and every teacher does have to hold their state registration to be eligible to be in the classroom.
Alrighty, so let's look at some of the different work options that we can offer when you do arrive in Australia. So just a reminder as well that even though we're the global team and we help you get across to Australia, ANZUK Education is a teaching agency. So we are helping to supply you with these kinds of work. You don't need to arrive in Australia and then start looking from scratch. We will have a team there already set up, waiting to help support you in the kind of role that you're looking for. So the most popular I would suggest is a lot of people start out with CRT, which means casual relief teaching. Now, this will depend on the state that you're intending to go to, and also potentially the type of teacher that you are. So make sure that you do have that chat with us if you're hoping to do CRT work in Australia so that we can guide you to where those opportunities are. Now, it does start out, a daily rate starts out around 410, which is, I know, a really popular question. We saw that question come up quite a few times in your sort of entry forms. So thank you for that. And look, you can get that up to 5 days. Now, there are sort of different availabilities depending on the time of year. Of course, Australian summer does not line up with the UK summer. So actually coming over it sometimes in the sort of UK summertime can be a really good time, but there are sort of quieter ends of the year. It's also a really great way to develop relationships with schools, get to know some of the different kinds of settings and the curriculum, of course, which is different in Australia. Really great way to sort of get in and get started straight away. And then from there, quite a lot of people develop those good relationships with schools, and then they might choose to move on to something like a contract. So especially for those of you who do decide to go over on a working holiday visa, contracts will be limited to about 6 months long, but our team is there ready to support you. And a lot of our schools are really aware that those sort of restrictions are in place for working holiday visa holders. So you can have contracts that are fairly short, maybe even only 1 or 2 terms in length. And then depending on if you are an Australian citizen or if you've got a different type of visa where you don't have that 6 month restriction, we can do longer term contracts as well.
Amazing. And I will say, as mentioned in the contract section there as well, these are most readily available for secondary and SEN teachers, especially if you are wanting to line these up in advance. For primary educators in particular, we do highly recommend starting with the CRT as a way to find the right school for you and get into those contracts down the line. Not to say that those contracts aren't available in advance, but it is a little bit more accessible, and a lot of the time it's a great way to find the right school for you before you commit. So really great way to try out different settings along the way.
Alrighty, so these are probably the two most popular destinations in Australia. Victoria, of course, where Melbourne is, and New South Wales, where Sydney is. So in Melbourne and Sydney, we have such a wide range of opportunities available. You've got everything from casual relief teaching for early childhood, primary, secondary, and SEN. But I will mention that if you're going across as a teaching assistant or an SEN TA, that those opportunities are available in Victoria only. And then, of course, we've got contract roles and permanent roles. So permanent, remember, it will depend on your sort of visa in all of those sectors, as well as lovely regional and rural opportunities. Now, these are two most popular sort of locations, not only because of the amount of work that is available and the kinds of work that's available, but because as well, we've got really amazing transport links in these two cities, which makes getting between different schools if you're doing CRT work, but also for your day-to-day life, much more convenient and accessible. So we really recommend, especially if you're coming over on that working holiday visa and you're going to be relying on public transport, perhaps rather than buying a car, then these are definitely the best two locations for you as well.
Fantastic. So as for our other locations that we do have available, we have offices in WA, South Australia, and Queensland. So in Western Australia, of course, that's going to be Perth, Adelaide in South Australia, and Brisbane specifically in Queensland. Now, we don't particularly have casual roles for primary and secondary educators in these locations. It is worth noting that. We are starting to kind of look into this in certain locations, but it's very, very early on. So this is only if you're really looking for those contract type roles. Unless, of course, you are an early childhood educator. We have casual and contract roles available for you pretty much anywhere you go in Australia, so you really can't go to the wrong location if you are in early childhood. As for those kind of permanent roles, though, they're available for early childhood, secondary, and SEN. We're quite limited when it comes to primary contracts as well in most of those locations, but do speak to us if you are considering going to one of those, and we can speak about it a little bit more specifically. We're starting to get a few roles in places like Perth for primary teachers, but things come up and they change. Of course, this is September of 2025. It might be different in a couple months' time. Um, Now, each of those locations, we do highly recommend having your own car for public transport rather than relying on things like trains and public transport and buses. They are going to be a little bit more spread out. You might go to more regional opportunities as well as if you do have a car. So it is definitely recommended to have car if you're based in any of those cities. And specifically, if you are going to Queensland, we do recommend avoiding areas like Gold Coast especially. It is going to be a lot more competitive. I think most of the Australians also want to move there because it's a beautiful, sunny location. So you've got a lot of competition going on there, and it can be a little bit harder to find roles if you are in those locations. Now, I know this is our Teach in Australia information session, but we do also have opportunities in New Zealand, so it is worth noting those as well. We are based in Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. We do have some roles there as well. They do have their own version of the working holiday visa. It is slightly different in that it does take a bit longer to process, and the length of time in which you can stay also is dependent on the type of visa, or I should say passport, that you hold. So UK passport holders can stay for up to 36, whereas Irish can only stay for about 12, I believe. So it is important to look into that before you do go ahead and apply for those as well. However, with that working holiday visa, there is not a 6-month working limit. So you can actually be in one role for the entire academic year. Which can be favorable to a lot of educators. And we do have contracts and casual teaching available for early childhood, primary, secondary, and SEN roles. So especially if you are thinking primary, and I definitely want to be in a full year contract, but I only want to go on a working holiday visa, New Zealand might be a great place for you to consider as well. And of course, there are long-term visa options available through employers as well. So if you are thinking of going long-term, speak with us about that as well. And we can maybe consider a few of the different options that might be available for those kind of permanent residency situations.
Alrighty, so we briefly discussed this before, but the various different kind of work options that we have available at ANZ UK, everything from early childhood, which has other levels as well. So if you've come to us and you have a diploma level, not a bachelor's or a PGCE, still talk to us. We have various levels of early childhood work. Of course, teaching in primary and secondary. We've got support staff, notably in Victoria only at this stage, and that's your TA or CNTA roles. We do have out of school hours care or OSH. Now, that is available only in Sydney, in New South Wales, and that is a little bit different in that it could include things like holiday roles, but it also could include after school. As it suggests, out of school hours doesn't necessarily mean that it's school based. So definitely, if you're interested in something like this, please do talk to us. And then we also offer executive opportunities.
Brilliant. So we are going to cover the basics of the teaching registrations available across Australia. And I know that this is a big page with a lot of information on it. I will note that we do have blogs for each of these states and each of these registration processes to help you through each of them. One in particular I will point out, if you are an early childhood educator of any form, the only one you will absolutely need to apply for is called a CEQA. That's the National Registration for Early Childhood Educators. If you are an early childhood teacher, you actually need to do both. So you have to do a CEQA and the state teaching registration for whichever location you're going to be based in. So definitely recommend speaking with us earlier rather than later because it can take quite a few months to get everything processed all together. Now, each of these locations, it kind of requires the same type of documentation regarding your qualifications, your identity documents, police checks, all those fun things. But they are going to be slightly different in how they're processed. The one that I will kind of point out here is NESA for New South Wales. You actually have to be in the state to apply for this process. I know some people try to find workarounds, but essentially you have to go in person to do one of the forms with your identity document. So there's not really any way to get around that one. So it might mean that you might be unregistered for the first 2 months while you are in the country. So definitely base that into your timeline as well. If you're thinking, I want to be there for right for the start of the academic year and I want to be teaching straight away, you might actually need to go a little bit earlier to get that sorted. The other states, such as Western Australia, Queensland, South Australia, they can be applied to about 6 months before you go. You do need your visa done, though, beforehand, but they do take a lot longer to process, so that's something to consider as well. And Victoria, one of the most accessible ones actually, is a two-step process where you can actually do a pre-assessment of your qualifications to ensure that you are eligible for registration, which is really helpful if you're a little bit concerned that your qualifications might not transfer over to the Australian requirements. And then you can do the registration step within 3 months of your arrival. So it's a nice way to kind of break up the process as well. Now it is where we're not experts on these processes. We see them all the time. We're quite used to getting educator feedback about how they've kind of gone through all these steps, and we do check the websites all the time for updates and new processes and all of that as well. But it is important to do independent research as well. Go onto the websites, check with them, email them if you do have direct questions for them. But we will help you as much as we can with the blogs and the information that we do have available.
Alrighty, so Corey did start to touch on this one already. We do have blogs on every single one of the registration processes. So oftentimes your questions may actually be answered in the blog. It is a step-by-step guide and a summary, but it's not the be-all and end-all. We do include the links to all of the direct sort of resources on their websites as well. So it is a really excellent tool there to help you with your own research. But we also have a lot of other resources that we provide to our educators. So one of those things is area guides. We will recommend different places to live based on where the opportunities are, where the public transport might be, where we know that it's really nice to live. We will also have different sort of packs of information. So we've like most important one is the Teaching Australia info pack. It is like your Bible. It's got everything that you need in it, from the academic calendar and the holidays, very important for planning. I mean, planning your vacations around the teaching times. But everything from that to perhaps commentary on cost of living, on transport option types, everything that you could possibly need to be really confident and comfortable setting up your life in a new country. So that one there is really important. We do webinars such as this, as well as in-person events. In fact, we've got quite a few in-person events coming up in the months of October and November, so do look out for those as well. And then we've got something we call the Growth Hub, and this is our learning platform. So you'll find everything on there, from like micro learning, so you can really get ahead on understanding the Australian curriculum, maybe bits and pieces about the Australian history or about Aboriginal or Indigenous cultures on there. Everything from helping you get ready for work in our classrooms all the way through to maybe tips and tricks about places to travel, transportation types, and things like life admin, tax and stuff like this. A lot of our sort of learning has been done by other educators who've done the same journey as you, and they have these lessons that they've learned, and they're really wanting to share that with our community. So that is something I think is really special about our community and what we can offer the educators that we support going across to Australia. And then you may also have the opportunity to then contribute as well in the future if that interests you. And we definitely touched on this before, but important to touch on this again. We offer that 360 support. So not only can we as a global team support you in getting across to Australia, but we have a team over there that will help you on coming back to the UK if you're looking for CRT or casual supply work, if you're looking for contracts and permanent roles as well, or if you want to extend your holiday and just hop across to New Zealand after your time in Australia, we can support you in going across there and setting up that sort of next job for you. So do keep in mind that that sort of 360 support is there for you as well. Alrighty. Now, this is key. So it's really important that you've come and you've listened to a lot of this sort of general information today, but please do know that there is a process, and if we follow the steps in this process, it'll make your journey to Australia really smooth. So the first one is really to have an initial contact with us. So perhaps after this, you're thinking, yes, I want to make the move. Not yet. That's fine. You can still book in a call with us, especially if you're going soon. But even if you are studying and you want to be planning on going sort of in the near future. So we can have this initial chat with you. We go through your CV and we actually help you make a timeline, a travel timeline, so that it helps you to understand the best times to arrive, what's going to really suit you depending on the state that you're going to and the work that you're looking for. So that chat is really important. And of course, you get to ask really specific questions about your situation. So if you've got any of those questions from today, you can save them for that one as well. Then after that, usually after you've done either your sort of visa process, you may already be doing your ASEQA if you're an early childhood educator, or perhaps have done your pre-assessment if you're going towards Victoria. When we have that information, around that time is when we put you into contact with the team in Australia so that they are preparing for your arrival. We'll have a quick chat with them about the sort of opportunities that are coming up and sort of have that more localized chat as well with them. So you've got them working on their end, helping prepare for your arrival. And of course, you've got us here helping you get across. And one of the things that we do to help you get across is making sure that you're compliant and ready to go. So compliance will be things like getting your references done, and also then making sure that you have the right police check at the right time as well for your application. So make sure you do sort of talk with us about that as well, so that we can make sure that you're ready to start work when you arrive in Australia and the process is smooth. Alrighty, and from there, once you have all of that done, you're going to be getting your registration. So you'll be registering in one of the states. I will support you through all of that sort of process as well. And then when you go and you arrive in your location, you'll go in and register to work with us in our office. So whether that be Melbourne, Sydney, or any of our other locations, you actually get to go in and meet the consultant who's going to be supporting you, meeting the team who's going to be around you, and making sure that you're registered and ready to work. And they'll go through things like the Growth Hub with you, but as well as our Ready to Work app, which helps to make sure that you are available for the days that you're available, or you're booking off for a holiday, all of that kind of stuff. You can sort of see where you're going to be working and when. And then after your registration and you are cleared for work, you'll have all of your paperwork done. You'll understand how to use sort of our Ready to Work app, and you'll be ready to really hit the ground running. So once you're cleared for work, really, you can walk straight into the classroom, and you know that you're going to be ready to teach. And you know as well that you've got a great consultant who's there with you, supporting you through that, and also the Learning and the Growth Hub to help you with any sort of professional development, and also the social aspect as well. We've got a lot of those events in Australia in person as well, and you might just meet your next roommate or your next bestie, who knows? So make sure that you just sort of keep your eye out for that. And that's the process in a nutshell.
Amazing. So thank you all for coming, for joining us, and for all of your questions along the way as well. I will say that this is not our only webinar. We have these every month. We have recordings on YouTube, so if you want to know what a day in the life of a CRT looks like, that's available. How to get those contract opportunities, regional roles as well. There is so much information available on our YouTube channel as well. And as I mentioned, we are going to email you in about a day or so with the recording of this so that you can come back, review any of the information that you want to see, and also book in that call with us. But I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and if anybody does have questions, you're more than welcome to pop them into the chat, and we'll kind of go through things from here.
I will mention that perhaps one of the questions that we had when you registered, somebody asked if they would be able to teach in Australia without having done their ECT years. Now, once you are qualified and you've finished your PGCE or your undergraduate, you can actually register directly in Australia. But do note that if you're planning on coming home, there is a time limit in which you can complete those ECT years. So make sure you've done your due diligence, you have checked that out. You do not need to have those 2 years done in order to teach in Australia. But for some people, it's the right choice to stay behind and do those ECT years. And for others, they're really keen to get out, get some really good experience in Australia under their belt, and then come home to do their ECT years later. So that can be a personal choice. But no, it's not a necessity in order to get teaching registration in Australia.
Fantastic. I did also see a question there as well about completing your master's degree in teaching once you have moved to Australia. If you're considering doing an online master's and that's your only teaching qualification, we kind of see questionable transitions with these types of qualifications when you're going over to Australia. So you do need to have that in-person supervised, university mentor involved placement to be able to register as a teacher in Australia. So if you're considering doing your master's while living in Australia, potentially worth doing it through an Australian university, or actually doing your teaching qualification before you go, just to ensure that you do meet all of the requirements to hold that teaching registration.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot more questions coming up in the chat here, which is awesome. So I'm just going to start going down the line here in the chat. Now, somebody has asked about the process going on a working holiday visa or going on a skilled visa. That's a great question. The timelines are quite different. If you're thinking of going over on a skilled visa, it is a much longer process. So you will need to, and we mentioned earlier as well that we partner with a migration agent. A lot of people choose to speak to a migration agent to really understand which of those visas really suits them. And then the updated sort of timeline will come from that. So usually what will happen is you'll have that chat, and then once you've had that sort of discussion, you get back in contact with us and we're able to help you then planning that timeline.
And if you're
Doing so.
transitioning from a working holiday visa onto a skills, so if you're starting on the working holiday and then you decide, actually, I love it here, I want to stay long term, it is possible to apply for a skills visa inside of Australia, or you can even have your working holiday visa granted and start the skilled visa process before you leave the country. We are seeing currently that those processing times are around anywhere between 12 to 14 months between the types of different skilled visas. So we do recommend doing your research now and getting a head start because the processing times can take a little while. How competitive is CRT in Melbourne, the St. Kilda area? This is actually a really, really great question, and I will make a note of two locations. So St. Kilda in Melbourne is a very popular area for especially Irish and also UK expats. And in Sydney, the equivalent of that would be Bondi and the Coogee areas. They call it County Coogee at this point. There's so many Irish over there. All of those locations are very, very competitive. They're going to be a little bit more expensive sometimes because of how many people are trying to live there. The public transport in each of those neighborhoods is not the most accessible. It is harder to get in and out of those neighborhoods, and we're limited on how many schools are in those neighborhoods. So it's actually going to be very, very competitive. Now, if you're on the outskirts of those neighborhoods, closer to train stations, public transport that's really accessible, or if you have a car, those are going to make it a lot easier to get out to different types of schools. So we do recommend avoid being right in the center of any of those neighborhoods. Look just outside.
Okay. I'm seeing another question here. Is it possible to do this process with a friend and go as a pair? Absolutely. We love it when that happens. And you can even have that initial call with the two of you. It'll take a bit longer, so please do make sure that you let us know. But we have a lot of people going over as pairs, as pals, as partners, sometimes in large groups as well. So if that's you, do let us know, because then we'll also make sure that when we put you in touch with the Australian-based consultant, that they're aware of who's going in a nice big group, and they can all sort of support you at the same time. They can have the same registration dates. You can all go into the office together, that kind of thing. And also we do have a referral bonus. So if you're going across and then you find out later on that a friend is really interested in going across as well, and you let them know, then you could be getting a $100 thank you for setting your friend up as well. So do keep that one in mind.
And no limit to how many people you can refer as well. Michaela also had a question about going as a skilled worker visa holder. I do want to point out the kind of process for that we recommend. Start with sorting out the visa side of things. Speak to a migration specialist because they're going to know best on what's going to work best for you. But once you have the process in mind and you know which visa route you're going to be pursuing, then come and speak to us because we can start looking into the timeline of when you might get over there and maybe start looking into getting roles kind of lined up in advance as much as possible and stay flexible with the timeline of when your visa might come through. You do have to have your visa approved to hold any of the state registrations though as well. So we'll kind of factor that in and help you figure out that timeline and make it all make sense once you've actually kind of started the visa route on your own, if that makes sense. And yes, a probation year in Scotland would be the same as your ECT year. So we do recommend, again, looking into when your kind of probation year needs to be completed by. I think sometimes it has to be done within 3 years after graduation. So if you are going to be going very soon, you're thinking of staying for a full 3 years on your working holiday visa, just consider that you might need to do your probation year first.
Alrighty. Then I'm seeing here that some people are asking questions about the different fees for instance, applying for your VIT registration. That is all on the VIT website for you, but we also have that in our blog. There is 2 separate fees, one for the pre-assessment and one for the teaching registration. So you do need to keep in mind that once you've paid the fee for the pre-assessment and that comes back with the green light, you will then, within about 3 months of arrival, is when you would then apply for your registration, and you'll have to pay the registration fee at that time as well. So it is really important when you're planning this process with us that you're aware of all those different fees, that you make sure that you understand sort of how much the visa is going to cost, how much the registrations and things like this are going to cost, and you're able to sort of budget for yourself for when you're planning on being there, especially if you're heading out to Sydney and you've got about 2 months where you might be waiting for that teaching registration to come through. So all of that kind of planning is really important. Alrighty.
Fantastic. Another question around international schools. We don't have access to too many international schools ourselves. As for the SEN side of things, though, and what SEN settings can look like. They can be similar to what we have available here in the UK, actually. So there are schools that might be mainstream focused, but there might be an SEN base on site, and sometimes students go back and forth. But we do also really specifically have ASD schools, so all autism schools, or what's called an SDS, a special development school, in which students might have a variety of needs from being nonverbal, being wheelchair users, medical needs, a whole kind of variety of different special needs that you might see in those settings. Now, I would say if that's something that you have experience in, or that you're wanting to gain experience in, highly, highly recommended. I was an SENTA myself, and it's a brilliant area to get involved in, and it's not very limited either. You can try out those settings, go in and get involved. There's a lot of capacity for longer term roles as well, because they do love familiar faces in those types of settings. So definitely, if it's something you're open to, definitely give it a go.
Alrighty. I've got a couple of questions here about going across to Sydney and getting a NESA. Now, when you are doing your NESA registration, yes, you can prepare a lot of the documentation before you leave. So you can have it signed here in the UK before heading across. Some people still choose to bring across the originals, and that's up to you, but you can have it signed by a Justice of the Peace in the UK. And then when you're heading out to Sydney, we have a few different areas with the casual relief teaching, but I would really recommend being in and around the western suburbs. We've got a lot of opportunity out that way, but also when things do change, and I'm giving you this information today, but if you're going in a year or two, that may have changed. So make sure that when you have that call with us, that we discuss those different areas. We'll be giving you our area guide map as well. And then when you also have that conversation with your Sydney-based consultant, it may depend on what kind of teacher you are. They'll also have that sort of more tailored knowledge, that more on-the-ground knowledge as well, so that they can give you personalized recommendations based on what you teach, maybe what your interests are as well, and the kind of work that you're interested in. So we do definitely offer sort of help and advice around that. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to give that advice over the phone, like right now, because it will maybe depend on exactly when you're sort of heading over. So for now, we really recommend those western suburbs. There's a lot of opportunity out sort of that direction.
Fantastic. And a question about the Victoria pre-assessment as well. That is required for all educators holding a qualification that was completed outside of Australia. So anybody from the UK, Ireland, Canada, Europe that has obtained a qualification in your home country, you do have to complete the pre-assessment to be eligible to do the provisional registration from there. And if it's your first time teaching in Australia, you are going to be registering as a provisional teacher in any of those states. It doesn't limit your employment in any way. It just shows that you are a first-time teacher in the country as well.
All righty, some questions as well relating to getting access to the curriculum. So you can actually look up the Australian national curriculum, but also depending on the state, they will have a state curriculum as well for usually secondary schooling. So would really recommend that, especially if you're wanting to get ahead of the game, you can absolutely look up those things before you head across too. And you can sort of see some similarities as well between the UK curriculum and the Australian curriculum. There is some overlap in different subjects. So that would be quite interesting for you to do. But as well, a lot of the time, teachers, when they go across, if they're getting into casual relief teaching, there is sort of the general relief, if you're interested in that, or if you're going into casual relief teaching as well, those teachers will be leaving behind the lesson plans and the resources for you. So you should never be, arriving at a school where there's been no work and resources left behind. So you absolutely will be supported when you go into schools, and especially especially in that casual relief teaching role, having access to shared resources and being given the day's lessons.
Another question around visas as an Irish passport holder. If you do want to go on the working holiday visa and you do want to extend beyond that first year, there are the 88 days of regional work you would need to complete to access the second year of your working holiday visa. Or if you're a dual passport holder with the UK, you could actually go onto your UK passport as well and access 3 years without any regional work. So that's an option as well. We do actually have a full guide to extending your working rights, which we will share with you as well after our call that we have one-on-one, which does go into the specifics of doing the specified regional work, how to access those opportunities, and some resources to get you started on those. But if you do want to consider a skilled visa as well, you want to prepare before you even go, VisaGo Australia are fantastic. We can link their website in the email that we send to you in the next couple of days here as well. They are brilliant migration agents based in the UK and in Australia, and they can give you all the resources that you do need for your specific scenario.
Alrighty, and then I'm seeing somebody here asking whether or not you can apply for NESA whilst on vacation, but you actually do need a visa to be able to apply for the teaching registration to demonstrate that you have working rights in Australia.
Fantastic. I think we might leave it there. I think that we've gotten through most of the questions here, but I would say again, the best thing that you can do is book in with us. It is never too soon to have a conversation with our global team. We can go through your specific questions, your specific kind of situation, and when you want to be making the move, where your qualifications, the whole works one-on-one. We can give you all of the resources that you need as well, and we can set up your timeline moving forward. So thank you all again for coming along with us and going through all this information. We are going to wish you a good evening, but keep an eye on your email and your junk inbox just in case. Sometimes our emails slip into there, and we will be in touch with you soon.
Alrighty. Thanks everyone for your time this evening, and hopefully I'll be speaking to you a bit more face to face next time.